The first one is Fusion Basics. The second module is Road to Fusion. Third is Plasma Control. Fourth is Fusion Materials. And the fifth one is about deployment of Fusion. So the modules are modular in nature. So that means that module 1 is the first module, and it introduces all the necessary concepts that are needed to follow all the other modules. So this is because the secondary school level we aim for is set 3 and 4. So general upper secondary level of education. And that can be quite broad. Some classes will have learned about some concepts, others might not. So in this first module, we really introduce all the basic concepts that are needed to understand Fusion on the basic level. The other modules, so the other 4, can be followed in any order and go a bit deeper into certain aspects of Fusion. So we hope that with these 5 modules, we can give you a very comprehensive overview of what Fusion is. But you can choose your lessons. So if you follow module 1, then your students will have a basic understanding. And if you then like to highlight, for instance, deployment, then you can pick module 5, and then you have 2 modules, and they will have a bit of a more in-depth understanding about a certain part of Fusion. Of course, you can also do all the modules, but that will probably take quite some classroom time. So if you have the time, that would be very nice. But it will also be sufficient to pick the modules you like most and then use those in the classroom. So last year we also had a presentation about these classroom materials and how we were developing them. So this is also to give you a bit of an update on the status of the modules. So as you can see, we have 5 front ends of the modules. These are the fronts of the student readers of each module. And the first module, Fusion Basics, is published. It can be found online. We've recently, this week, put it online after the final review. So this one is now available on the FuseNet website, which we'll get back to later on. The second module is in final review. So the module has been written, has been created, but we are in the final stage of reviewing everything, making sure that it's up to par, that the quality is okay before we can publish it. The third module is 90% towards the first draft, after which it will go into the final review, and after that it will be published online. The fourth module is 70% towards first draft. It's also quite a long way. And the fifth one is also in final review. So one module is published, 2 are in final review, and the other 2 are nearly ready for final review. So where can we find this educational material? FuseNet has an educational materials browser. You can find all sorts of educational materials on here, such as books, multimedia, movies, experiments, and also material for educators. And all this content that you can find on the educational materials browser is curated by FuseNet, and it is for varying levels of education. So once the primary school material will be ready, this will also be put online in the educational materials browser. And at the same time, we also include books for PhD level, master level, bachelor level. All educational levels are present in the educational materials browser. So there's a lot that can be found on there already. And this is how it looks. So on the website, we have, well, you see all kinds of stuff. We have now searched for the category material for educators. In that category, all the Teacher Day material will be published. So all the modules for secondary school will be published under material for educators. So that way you can easily filter out videos from learning modules. So module 1 is available now online. And then let's take a look at the setup of each of these modules. So it's online, but what is online? Each module consists out of 4 things: a student reader, presentation slides, both in PowerPoint and in PDF format, a teacher's manual, and additional exercises. And first we have a look at the student reader. So as you saw earlier, the front is visible on the right. And on the left, you can see the first few pages. So we have 5 chapters within the module. And as you can see, we've made a nice design. The font size is quite large, so the information density isn't too high, so it reads easily. We've marked some key content, key definitions and key terms. And we've also put in those big orange blocks, which are asides, which are extra information that does not need to be included in the lesson, but might be a nice addition to the lesson. Other than that, we've also included classroom exercises, which you can see here on the top left. So these are short exercises that you can use to create a classroom discussion, or that you can discuss in class. And also at certain points within the text, there will be some exercises recommended from the additional exercises. So we've also made more in-depth exercises, which can be made by the students. So the next paragraph, so first we introduce in this module the energy problem to give a bit of an introduction. Why is fusion interesting at all? So there's an energy problem, there's climate change coming. Then we go into fusion inside our sun. Our sun is one big fusion reactor, and this is a very nice subject to explain fusion on a basic level, to delve into the key physics concepts necessary for fusion to occur. After that, we go back to Earth because, well, we want to create fusion here on Earth, and that works a bit differently than in the sun. So on Earth, we mainly do this via plasmas, especially here in Europe with magnetic confinement fusion. So plasmas are terms that, of course, students have heard from popular things like TV and films. But in this module, then plasmas are explained on a basic level that is understandable for students. So we go into charged particles, ionization of particles, electric and magnetic fields, and how particles behave in them. Then the final paragraph is about building a fusion device. So by now, the students know why fusion is relevant, know what fusion is and how it works in the sun, know what a plasma is, how a plasma can be made. And then the final step is, how do we build a fusion device out of this on Earth? And then after that, we have a further reading, which is present in all of the modules, in which we put any extra links or useful content that could be useful for both students and teachers. So in module 1, you see 2 QR codes. Those lead to an app, which will be showcased later today. So that's the student reader. It's a total of 40 pages. It has 5 chapters. Each module will have multiple chapters. The first module, because it is an introduction to the basic stuff, is a bit larger than the others. So 40 pages sounds like a lot, but it's also some stuff that you might skip, because if you already treated some stuff in your classroom and you don't need to use that again, or you might use it as a recapitulation of that material. So the other modules will be slightly shorter and go a bit deeper. Then next to the student reader, we've also created presentation slides for you, because we want you to have a ready-to-use lesson that you just download and then walk through the teacher's manual, and you should be able to immediately use it. So we've created nice slides with some visuals, with high-quality images, just to help you, make the preparations as small as possible, so that you can still give a very nice lesson about fusion. So on here you can see that we've made some graphics. We talk about the nucleus, about protons, neutrons. We talk about the criteria for fusion. Everything that is in the student reader is in a presentable format put into the presentation slides. And well, as you can see here, that also involves how a tokamak looks. That is a bit of a donut shape, but also the classroom exercises. So once you give a presentation about these subjects, the classroom exercises are also implemented into the presentation slides, so that you can immediately give a discussion, give a classroom exercise, and also answers are put in there, except for when it's purely a discussion. So if answers can be put into a PowerPoint slide, they are also implemented there. Some additional slides here. Well, so it's a total for module 1, this is a total of 50 slides. So it's a lot of slides. You can use these however you want. They're free to adapt to your preferences. That's also why they are available both in PowerPoint and in PDF. In PDF, you can't really adapt them. In PowerPoint, you can. You can throw slides you don't like out of them. You can improve them however you want and make sure that they fit your preferences. So the student reader and the presentation slides are a lot of content, a lot of information is in there, and we've made a teacher's manual to help you through using all of this material. So there's multiple chapters in the teacher's manual. The first, we state the learning objectives of the module. We talk about closely related subjects so that you know which lessons could easily be coupled or paired to such a fusion lesson. We discuss the topics of the module per chapter so that you get a clear view of what is inside of this module. And we have basic lesson schemes. So we've already made a couple of lesson schemes for average and advanced students, and these are of varying length. So we have a 50-minute lesson scheme, we have a 1-hour lesson scheme. That way you can pick what you like, get an easy overview of what might be useful to implement in a very short lesson, what can be skipped more easily, etc. And finally, in the end, we also have some extra information on the PowerPoint, on the materials, and some further references, which are both for studying and for fun. So a lot of links to websites with a lot of Fusion information or Fusion content, and also a lot of YouTube videos, infographics, online animations that you can use to explain topics in your lessons. And last but not least, of course, answers to classroom exercises and answers to additional exercises, because we give you these exercises, but it's also nice to have the answers available to you. So the teacher's manual is about 20 pages, contains a lot, and we hope that this, together with all the material, gives you a flying start to use this in your classroom. Then the final thing that I had not yet highlighted was the additional exercises. So these are extra exercises which we've selected per chapter of each module, and they are ranked in level of difficulty. So we have introduced a system of stars. So 1 star is an introductory exercise, 2 stars is an intermediate exercise, and 3 stars is a challenging exercise that might require a lot more thinking and a lot more depth. So by providing these exercises, we also hope to stimulate reading and learning about Fusion by your students. That's all for module 1. So that's what we've created, and the same we're doing for all of these other modules. So module 1 has been published, but the others are also nearly ready. And in module 2, we go through a kind of chronological approach to Fusion. So we start with the discovery of Fusion. We go over some first devices. There was a period of great breakthroughs, but also of a lot of pessimism, which is then handled. And we end at ITER, which is the current frontier of Fusion science and engineering, and which you will see live in just about an hour. So the third module then is about plasma control. So we know in module 1, we explain what a plasma is, how that is useful in creating fusion, but we need to control that as well. So a basic introduction to control is given here. For example, looking at things like a thermostat and how you heat a room. These same concepts, of course, apply to a fusion reactor, then a bit more in depth. So how you heat the plasma, how you measure the plasma, and more. Then the fourth module goes into the material side. So a bit of material science. In a fusion reactor, we need to have a heat exhaust. We need to have plasma-facing materials that can withstand that great heat. And we also need to take care of the neutron irradiation. And we have blanket materials for that, but they need to need to be able to withstand all those harsh conditions there, all the neutrons that are flying their way. And finally, superconductivity is also a very nice frontier of science where new magnets are being developed, which we start to use in fusion more and more lately, because they provide the highest magnetic fields we can create. And finally, it's not all technicalities, engineering and physics. Fusion also has an economic side to it and a political side to it. So the future of fusion does not only depend on the physics, it also depends on the electricity market, on how the energy transition will happen, how electricity is supplied, and about fusion economics. So ITER is an example of a very large international collaboration that also always involves a lot of politics. And that's what this module is about. So with these 5 modules, we think that we can give you a broad comprehension of fusion on the secondary school level, which is fun for students to learn about and gives them a lot of new information and cool concepts, while using a lot of concepts they would generally learn in physics classes anyway. So with that, I would like to invite you all for questions. So I've discussed the 5 modules which we have, which we are making, and the content of each module. So each module will consist of a student reader, presentation slides, teacher's manual, and additional exercises. And well, one is published online and the others are on the way. And we hope that with these materials, well, we can provide you with cool stuff to give lessons about. So if there's any questions, I think I would like to open the floor for questions.
Thank you, Sander, and we should probably just make sure everyone knows how to do that. I'm right in thinking that we should use the Q&A button in the bottom of the panel. Is that how to do it?
I see some questions popping up in the chat to host some panelists. You can also ask questions in the Q&A. But I'll just start with the questions that are in the chat now. The first one is, when is each module going to be available? Yeah, well, the first one is published now. Some are in final review. However, this review process does take some time, and the others are in are 90% or 70% towards first draft. So because we do not want to give out deadlines and then disappoint you guys, I will not name specific dates, specific times when we will publish these, because we want to make sure that each module is of quality content and is just right for use by you guys. So they will come out soon. We hope to publish them all as soon as possible. But the first one's on the way, or is already there, and 2 are quite near their full completion. So modules 2 and 5 can be expected soon. Modules 3 and 5 will be expected later.
I mean, Sander, perhaps you might, I don't wish to put you on the spot too much, but perhaps you could give us an upper bound on when, for example, modules 2 and 5 are likely to be ready. So for example, are they likely to be ready this calendar year, I guess?
We expect them to be ready this calendar year, yes, but we do not want to, it might be that there will be some delays, so that's why we don't want to give a hard deadline, but I expect it to be ready before the end of calendar year, or very near to near in the new year.
So I'm wondering if I can answer the next question, Sander, if that would be okay.
Yes.
So the question that I think has been asked 2 or 3 times is whether the material is going to be available in other languages. So this hasn't been part of the original project. At the moment, the slides are available in English only. However, the so-called FuseNet board that I'm involved with, who thinks about where we should place investments and so forth, as it happens, met earlier this week. And my colleague who is in charge of the secondary school work package, who's on the call, Evgenia Banova from Bulgaria, was discussing the question of whether we could translate some of the material. Translating the material into all, whatever it is, 20 languages of Europe is going to be too big a task, certainly to do urgently. So what we're seeking is to get a relatively small number of languages, which could be argued to be highest priority, perhaps based on the convention of teaching in that country, And then we will seek investment, which we're reasonably keen we would be able to get, that we would seek some funding in order to make, in the next calendar year, we would then seek to make some translations. But it's not going to be a large number of languages, but we think that it would be really good not to have the material only in English. So if you, I mean, I think it's okay for me to say this, if you think that you would certainly use this if it was in your language, but you would definitely not if it was in English only, then if you can let us know, for example, do we have an email? Well, I was gonna just announce an email address, which perhaps I shouldn't do. Sandra, do we have an email address associated with this event, for example?
Yes, we have a Teacher Day email address, which will be put into the chat. So
Great.
if you are really interested in having a translated version and will only use it if it's translated, then please send us an email, because it's well, the first project that I'm now working on is getting all the modules finished. That's our main priority, and after that we will look into what the translation will entail, and that will be quite a large financial investment. So we first need to have a good look at what is possible, but it will definitely help if we know where people are really waiting on materials in their language. So yeah, please send us an email, and then we will get back to you.
Yeah, and in terms of volunteers for doing the translation, that would be great. And then we can. So the idea would be that we probably need volunteer translators, but then FuseNet would finance the typesetting and so forth. That's the proposal. Okay, no, thank you for that. That's a really important question, because accessibility is, we haven't really satisfied our accessibility if we're only managing to get to those people who can speak English. Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's also with materials at the start last year. So we did present the materials, our plans of creating 5 modules, but the modules as we presented them then were a lot smaller. So over the course of creating these modules, we really found out that just keeping them that small as we initially planned would not lead to good quality materials. So that's why it's also taking a lot longer, because we have a lot larger task to do, and well, we are nearing completion. So I think in the end we will have very nice modules to show for them, and we of course hope that they will be used a lot within Europe, and that's also, if you use them and you have feedback, you can also send that to that email address, because they have been reviewed, they've been tested by some, but they have not been tested in many classrooms yet. So please, if you use them, let us know if there's things we can improve, because that feedback is very valuable to us.
So Sandra, I'm going to pick another question, if that's okay for you to
Yes.
Address. A question which has been upvoted a bit is whether you can give an indication of the teaching time required to deliver these modules. So is module 1, is it an hour? Is it 5 hours, spread over a week? What's your recommendation for how the module be delivered?
Yeah, so our goal with each of these modules is that they are mainly sufficient for a 1-hour classroom lesson. And some of these modules have grown a bit, so that the content that is in the module could fill 1, but also 2, and might even fill 3 classroom hours. So there's a lot of content, but that's also why in the teacher's manual we've made basic lesson schemes, because we have heard your feedback last year that the main thing you would like is either a 15-minute introduction into Fusion or a 1-hour dedicated Fusion lesson. So that's also the goal of these materials, that you have, that we have taken a lot of preparation out of your hands, that you read through the teacher's manual, read through the reader and watch the slides, and then you are capable of giving a 1-hour Fusion lesson to your class. And if you have time, you can give more than that. But if you have little time and just want to introduce Fusion on a small level, you can also do a very quick lesson of about 15 minutes. So that way we hope to bring you what you need, and the needs of teachers across all Europe, of course, varies quite a bit. Some might have a lot of time on their hands to talk about fusion, others might not. So we hope that with these lessons we can satisfy all your needs.
So, by the way, I'm not sure if I meant to be doing this, but I seem to have given myself the role of picking the questions, which I think are probably of widest interest. So another question that's certainly been upvoted is and I think you might have mentioned this briefly, but quite briefly towards the start of your presentation, is the educational level that you would recommend. Yeah,
it's hard for me to pronounce it. It's there's a European codes are there, ISCED, and that's European educational levels, and we are aiming for ISCED 3 and 4, so that's upper secondary school, so between 15 and 18 years old, 14 and 18 years old, so when they've just learned a bit about physics up to before they go to university. So that's kind of the range, and that's also why, especially in module 1, there's we introduce what a proton is, what a neutron is, which is quite basic stuff. So people that are in pre-university classes will already know all of that. Will know that probably quite easily. Other stuff is a bit more advanced, but we introduce it on that same level, or we try to introduce it all at the basic level, go from first principles to the main concepts, and such that it should be comprehensible for all. And yeah, we try to go a bit more in depth into the other modules and into the more advanced exercises.
Thank you, Xander. And so another question that's been asked is whether it's possible for people from universities to come, and Xander, I'm going to answer this one if I may. So this question that's been asked about whether it would be possible for people from universities to come and provide some support, some in-person support. In particular, I absolutely understand this if perhaps physics isn't your area. You know, so from a teaching point of view, I've just done a little bit of school teaching here and there, but I remember sometimes being asked to teach things that weren't my area of expertise. So I think it's a really good question. Could people come in from university and provide a bit of assistance, or if you're teaching the people right at the end of high school who themselves might have some quite advanced questions? And what I would say is, absolutely do get in touch with your local university. There is a list of university FuseNet members on the FuseNet website. So those people who are members of FuseNet, it's not an exhaustive list of universities in Europe that do fusion, but the bulk of universities that offer fusion education are on that list. And I can say that we personally here in York in the UK quite often get requests to come in and deliver some teaching or do a science day or an afternoon. And the worst that can happen is the person says, "I'd like to do that, but I'm sorry, I'm too busy." Right? If you can't find a contact, if you look on the university list, and when you do a bit of Googling, you can't find an obvious contact, then please get in touch with FuseNet. For example, on the email address that Luke put on the chat, because networking, putting people in touch with each other, sometimes in some places on the website we call it matchmaking, is absolutely FuseNet's core business. So if you need someone to come into your school to do something, then please do get in touch with us.
Yeah, that well, I don't need to add anything to that. I think there was one thing in the chat I think I would like to point out. There was someone mentioning that there's a Tokamak in the Netherlands, and I'm from the Netherlands. Unfortunately, we do not have a Tokamak. We do have some other fusion devices, a linear device, and a dedicated fusion research group. So that I think was important to point out, so that there's not mistakes in what's available. But yeah, there's also, so last year in the live stream we had, for instance, a live plasma shot from the Golem Tokamak. So I know that the team in Prague also often does via live sessions, virtual sessions, experiments with students. So you can, if you send them a an email, you can probably arrange for them to have a virtual experiment in your classroom in which students can operate a small tokamak. So there's a lot of stuff also on there in the educational materials browser. So there's a search category named experiments. And while a lot of these experiments are on the master and level and higher, it's also free for you to just contact those people and ask whether they have something for secondary schools, because there's a lot of outreach going on, and I think that most institutes will be happy to help out if they can.
Okay, so I think we're more or less there. There's a question whether the material has been tested yet for students. I mean, I don't know if you want to comment, Sander, on that.
Yeah, I'd like to comment on that. So this material has been developed by FuseNet. So we have a lot of fusion expertise, but at FuseNet we're not teachers, but that's why we've contacted and hired teachers to help us develop the material. So all the materials are made together with high school physics teachers, which does not mean that all the modules have been completely tested in the classroom yet, but that is something we hope to see in the future. And we also hope to receive feedback from you if you use it, but everything should be ready for the classroom. And that's also, there's a lot of content there to use, and you are free to use it any way you like. So you can also pick and select topics you say, well, that fits my class perfectly, and I want to use that now for 10 minutes. That's also all fine. So everything is free to use for you in the classroom. So I hope that answers the question. And if there's feedback, then we will improve the materials, and then hopefully they will get better and better. I also see the question, are these modules meant for only the top level students, or are they also fit for lower levels? We've tried to keep them to a basic level. So the larger or more difficult calculations can be found in some of the additional exercises, which are marked with, for instance, 3 stars. But a lot of the concepts are really from first principles. So we use only very few formulas in the text. We try to explain it in words and examples. So in that way, we hope that it's not just for the top level students, but also for all students to get a bit of a feeling what fusion is.
Okay, so yeah, we've got, I mean, I think we've, oh, there's a question about whether there's a video of someone delivering the slides. I think that's an interesting idea. We haven't done that. We haven't done that yet.
No.
My personal view, and again, Sander might kind of want to comment as well, but is that I've spent a lot of time during the COVID era, during the pandemic, recording lectures and then having students watch them. My personal view is that I don't think that delivers the same experience as someone delivering the material in 3D. But Werner, if you feel like it would be a useful thing for us to do, please drop us a line and we can put it on the list of on the wish list if you like. But thank you for the idea, certainly.
Yeah, and to add to that, last year ITER also made a very nice presentation, which can be found on the FuseNet website in the educational materials browser, in which communications intern of them explains to teachers how they should talk about ITER. So he really explains all the nice things you can tell about ITER, how ITER works. And there's a PowerPoint available, which is huge. It's 5 GB, so be careful in downloading it. It will take some time, but it's filled with all kinds of animations. So it's a PowerPoint that's not just a static slide. It's once you put it on, you have all these images that go around and that move and shift and tell a story. And these are also freely available, and you can use those any way you want. And some of them have narrating, some of them don't. So be sure to look around in the educational materials browser. And of course, we will keep continuing to add stuff once we find nice things to add. And that will also be the further reading of the modules. Will also, if you find something nice that you think, well, other teachers would like to have that, send it to us and we can incorporate that into the list of links and videos we have found.
Okay, Xander, I think I've been doing my best to keep track of what's been coming up on the chat.
Yeah.
And I think we're pretty much there. So I guess we're a couple of minutes ahead of schedule. Yeah. But my experience tells me that it's easier to lose time than gain time. So I think if you're happy to do so, we can always just have a quick stretch. But perhaps we should, if you're happy to do so, perhaps we should move on to onto the next item. So I think, So I was just going to say, so I think you're going to demonstrate Operation Tokamak to us.
Yeah, it's still me, so it fits nicely into this because I already mentioned it for a bit. I need to stop sharing and go to another PowerPoint now. Let's see where it is. There it is. Because there's a lot of stuff already out there on Fusion that's very nice to show, and that we haven't yet been able to. Well, that just hasn't been out there a lot. And one of these things, this Operation Tokamak app is also mentioned at the further reading in Module 1. It's an app that is freely available both on the iOS App Store and on the Android Play Store. It was created by Mark Film. And I'm going to explain a bit how this app works, and then we're going to look at a video of this app. So here you see an image of the inside of a tokamak. And you already see a little bit of a glow in there. There's a small plasma. So in this game, you need to start up your plasma and make sure that the plasma gets heated, that the magnets are strong enough, and that your device doesn't damages. And you want to ramp up your temperature to 200 million degrees so that you can get maximum amount of fusion. So at the same time, you need to, well, you have two sliders to control the tokamak. It's like you're in the control room and have a window looking into the tokamak itself. The first one is the heating power, and the second one is the magnet power. So first you heat your plasma, and you keep it confined with your magnets. And you need to play around with both the heating and the confinement of the heating and the magnets to get good confinement. If the confinement's too high or too low, things will start to happen. So it needs to reach 200 million degrees. If you reach that temperature and your device is still not damaged or not broken down, you've won the game, and you have, well, need to produce as much fusion power as possible getting there. So as mentioned, you can damage your reactor, and we don't want that to happen. So at startup, your plasma will grow and grow larger, start to be hotter, which is visualized in this app through color. So the colors indicate the temperature. So as you can see, blue is a bit cold, yellow is a bit hotter, and red, of course, is even more hot. As you can see, in the end, we get quite a big plasma, quite a high temperature. And that's not all there is, because in a fusion, in a tokamak, it's not as easy as just ramping up the heat and making sure that the magnets work. There's a lot of instabilities as well that need to be suppressed and counteracted. So in this app, they've incorporated magnetic islands, which are magnetic structures in the side of the plasma. Well, in real life, you won't see them like this, but here they are visualized as black spots in your plasma. And they are very real instabilities that do lead to a lot of well, bad things to happen in a tokamak. So you then need to suppress them by tapping on the screen at the magnetic island. And then with injection of microwaves, we can suppress these instabilities, which is also what we do in real life, except for the tapping on the screen bit. Well, you don't want to get confinement too high, because then your machine doesn't start to do well. It starts to damage the reactor wall. But you also don't want to get it to be too weak, because then the particles are no longer confined. They can get away, they can cool down, and while they cool down, they will radiate away a lot of energy. And that's also why you can see here that there's a lot more light. So normally in the center of your tokamak, there's no light coming out because the plasma is incredibly hot and everything is ionized. But near the edge, you have some neutrals, and those, well, can get well, have some line emission. And that's what we see here. If the confinement is too weak, a lot of particles will get to the edge, will start to be neutralized, will start to radiate away power. So that's this app. And well, I've thought about it, but it's a lot more fun to just show it. So I'm going to show you a video of me playing it, and don't be too harsh because it's not that I'm that good in playing with the game, but I would invite all of you to download the app and play the app if you'd like, or share this with students, because I think this is also a nice way to show students how a fusion reactor works in a very clean and nicely made way. You should be able to see it now. Am I correct? Yes. So here you see that the heating power goes up. Confinement is still good. You see that there's starting to be a bit of more glow. Plasma is heating up, it's growing. Confinement was too low. Too high. And you see instabilities already appearing. And if you don't shoot at them with the EC, with the microwaves, they will eventually dominate the plasma. So these magnetic islands, they are kind of like a short circuiting of energy and of particles to the edge of your plasma. And that means that the plasma can cool down quicker. And as you can also see, these magnetic islands, they rotate in the plasma. They are often in symmetric ways, so either 2 or 3. And as you can also see, the reactor wall is getting damaged already. There's more islands coming in. It's getting a bit more difficult as the temperature becomes higher. So really, it's about playing around with both the heating and the magnet, and shooting or targeting the instabilities to suppress them. And this app has been developed as an initiative of Eurofusion. And it's been available for, I think, a year or 2, but it's a very nice thing for students. Well, that's it. And in the end, you see how much CO2 you've saved, how much energy you've generated. And that's it. So I hope you've enjoyed watching that. And I hope that will also be useful in a classroom setting. So these kind of things will also be implemented in the classroom materials, will be put in the teachers' manuals, etc. So you can find all these kind of stuff and use them however you like.
I'm losing.
Yeah, I've cheated a bit and put it on medium. I haven't been able to succeed in hard. So there's multiple levels of difficulty.
Yeah, my Tokamak is undergoing a very violent instability at the moment. Anyway, okay. Yeah, so we've got a couple of comments. So we apparently there's some issues running on the latest version of Android. Well, my phone, I can't comment on that because my phone does not use the latest version of Android. It uses my phone is very old. But I mean, we can have a look at that, can't we, and see what the see what technical issues there are. there. What's the latest update date on the App Store?
To be honest, I'm not sure. I've always been able to download it and play it on my phone, but it's also not the latest version. So I'm not entirely sure what's the issue there, but we will look into that.
Yeah, and someone said that it looks like the app was released a few years ago, and indeed it was. Yeah. So so it's not something that's been released in the last 6 months or something. So no, it's been around a little while now, this app. But yeah, we're certainly happy to investigate issues with the latest version of Android. We'll see if we can make that work. Can it be downloaded on an iPad? Now that's a good question. Can we make it work on something bigger?
I should think it should work. It's on the iOS App Store, so an iPad should be able to download it. I haven't tested it yet, so
good question. Give it a go. We think it should do. We think it should work.
Don't take my word for it, but please do try and let us know.
Yeah, there's good. It's there's a question about whether we're shooting, what's being shot at the plasma, whether it's frozen pellets or whether it's microwaves. Well, I'm a microwave guy, so I've always assumed that they're microwaves. But there's a good question about whether there's some documentation describing what the app is meant to be showing, right? Do we have anything like that? I don't know.
I do not have any documentation whatsoever, but it should be out there somewhere. I also assumed it to be microwaves because it looks kind of like a laser beam, and that's also one of the methods of suppressing magnetic islands. But I think, Roddy, you know probably a lot more about that than I do. So.
Yeah, well, certainly microwaves can be used. Yes, so electron suction current drive, it's called. So microwaves, typically in the 100 gigahertz range or sort of sub-millimeter wavelength range, can be used to heal these magnetic islands that form typically at mid radius in a tokamak. So I've assumed that's what it is. But this is a good question because there must surely be some documentation from somewhere. So that if we may, Luke and Sander, let's make sure we put that on our list and dig something out. I can't believe it doesn't exist. So let's find it and put it on the educational materials browser. Thank you to those of you who have thank you to those people who have I think someone's confirmed that it does indeed work on iPad. I think I saw a message just a second ago, so thank you for confirming that. So Laura has asked, how do the microwaves suppress the magnetic islands? I'm worried that I'm probably not meant to be talking for too long.
Well, we have 10 minutes.
I'll try not to be too long. So what happens is that these magnetic islands form because there are essentially tubes of electrical current that form in the plasma that we don't want. And so these tubes of current have associated with them magnetic fields that go around them. They consequently form this magnetic island. This is bad because particles travel very quickly along magnetic field lines. So this is an oversimplification. But what's one of the reasons that tokamaks work is that they have these nested magnetic surfaces, and to lowest order, the particles stay on their own magnetic surface. But if you create an island in the middle of the plasma, then the particles can hop around that magnetic island very quickly and get from the inside to the outside extremely fast. So this is why they're really bad. What we do is we inject a microwave beam to drive a current in the opposite direction to the current going down that tube. That's broadly speaking what we do, and that and that then means there is no additional current and the magnetic island goes away. There are then all sorts of higher level questions one can ask, like how do you target a particular place in the plasma? It turns out we know ahead of time where these islands are going to be. So these islands occur in very specific places. So we can make sure that we've designed our tokamak and our microwave system in such a way that our microwaves are tuned to the location where these islands are going to grow. But no, that's a really good question. Okay.
I think then if there are no questions left, we can make the break a bit longer. So we have a break set for you guys, which is until 4 o'clock for CEST, Central European Summertime. And after that, we will see ITER live.
So back in 29 minutes.
Yes.
Roddy, thank you very much for this very kind introduction, and welcome, folks. It's my great honor and pleasure to welcome you to the ITER project and to walk you through, literally. So today we are having a little premiere because I am presenting from the ITER studio, which is a green room, and we have been using this a lot. But for the first time ever, we will, after my little introduction, we will connect you directly to my colleagues who are on the ITER worksite, just a few hundred meters outside this building. And they are waiting there for us, and they will show you what Roddy just mentioned, the dimensions of what we do and where we are at. Yes, ITER is currently one of the largest international scientific collaborations. We have 35 nations joined under the ITER flag. And the aim of our quest is to prove that, yes, we can produce fusion energy, that we have the technology, that we have the materials, that we have the knowledge to go ahead and build a fusion power plant. So under ITER, the whole knowledge base of fusion development is coming together, it's culminating here. The world is collaborating here, and everything that we know that we have done on fusion is being integrated in ITER. So it is very unique in many regards. And we keep talking a lot about the science and engineering of ITER. There are so many more stories to tell, and there is this big human experiment here. We have at least 27 nations by the last count working here together, and people move here with their families, and we have an international school just for ITER. So it's really a very comprehensive project. I have to watch my time. So the ITER story actually started back in 1985 in Geneva, where Ronald Reagan and Mikhail Gorbachev, the then world leaders, met for the Geneva Superpower Summit, and they decided on many world issues, world peace issues. But at the end of this conference, they also discussed a collaboration towards the research of new energy, and they called it ITER. The East and the West were divided by the famous Iron Curtain in those days, but science doesn't recognize political borders, has never done. So there have been very intense negotiations and collaborations already between the East and the West, and the Brits were also very advanced in fusion power. But they all realized at that time that no one can do it alone. And it's not just a financial thing. It is really developing large-scale technology, new technology. And so most of what you see here at ITER, if you come to visit, is a first of a kind. So we are taking many technologies and scientific outcomes to another level here. So this makes this project really unique. So that was the starting bell for ITER. Today we have 7 official partners. So we have China, we have all the European countries, we have India, we have Japan, Korea, Russia, and the United States of America, together 35 nations. And our goal is to reproduce what is happening naturally on the sun. On the sun is fusing hydrogen atoms, and they are fusing there because of the super big mass of the sun. The gravitational forces force the hydrogen atoms to fuse, and mankind has thought about how we could sort of bring this reaction down on Earth, because it releases a lot of energy, as we all know, without the sun. So there have been a lot of experiments over the last 60 years. Many machines were built, and there are also many different technologies. There are stellarators, there is laser fusion, there are pistons. General Atomics in Canada, they use large pressure pistons. We at ITER, we decided to go for the Tokamak concept, which uses magnetic confinement. I think you will have heard a little bit about this earlier on. So, and in this trick machine, to bring the sun down here to Earth, we need a trick machine in which we fuse hydrogen atoms. In our case, it's deuterium and tritium. We force these atoms to fuse, and the outcome is helium and a neutron. Helium is quite interesting, it's an alpha emitter, but what the world is after is this little guy N. It's the neutron which carries all the energy of the reaction. To do so here on Earth, as I said, we need a little trick machine. There have been a lot of trick machines built in the UK. The JET machine is currently the largest. We have a lot of newcomers in Asia, the East facility, the K-Star, and many, many more. There are many private enterprises coming out of the ground with private money, which is very interesting to see. But we have the largest database for the Tokamak, which is a Russian acronym, which means toroidal camera with a magnetic coil. So the main features, here, the pointer. The main features are the huge vacuum chamber, which is the orange marked part here. And this whole vacuum chamber sits in a large magnetic cage. So the main magnetic cage is sort of the core of what we are doing. It helps us to keep the plasma afloat away from the walls inside the vacuum chamber. It helps us to stabilize and maneuver the plasma and to control the plasma. So yeah, it's 30 meters. The machine is 30 meters tall and 30 meters wide, so it really dwarfs the former experiments. And we are really, with this machine, we are really taking fusion to an industrial scale. We will get to that. So one of the main features, of course, is the vacuum vessel itself. The vacuum vessel is the sort of big barrier also in which the plasma will be kept. So, and it's the primary containment barrier. It's a massive piece, and it's partly built by the European partner and by Korea. We have then the cryostat, which we call the thermos. This is the outer shell of the Tokamak, of the machine, ITER machine. Inside the cryostat, we have all the cold world. Sorry for going back and forth. Inside the vacuum vessel, where we have the plasma, where we sort of ignite the plasma, it will be hotter than in the core of the sun. We have to heat the plasma up to 150 million degrees to generate the fusion reactions and to trigger these neutrons. Outside the vacuum vessel, we have a thermal shielding, and there we have the superconducting magnets. And this is what we call the cold world. And there we reach temperatures of almost absolute zero, which means it will be colder than on the dark side of the moon. So we have huge temperature differences within a few meters distance. That, together with the super large electromagnetic forces in this machine, really ask for some very, very clever engineering. And in the center of this image, and also in the magnet, in the center, you see this one column, which is the central solenoid. 2 weeks ago, we received the first module of this big magnet from the United States. When it is assembled, there are 6 packs in total. It will just, this magnet alone will carry as much energy to lift 2 aircraft carriers. So, and not to speak about the toroidal field coils, which are the ear-shaped magnets. We have 18 of those, and I think by now half of them are here on site. 2 of them you will perhaps see later on the hall. They are a bit hidden by scaffolding because they are ready to go into the pit. We have 6 poloidal field coils, of which 2 are already inserted in the machine. I'm just giving you a very quick wrap up here because I want to take you on site, and I also want to leave a little bit of time for questions. This is a picture taken this morning. I was on site with a photographer and we went to the cooling water part. And, you know, we are on site every day, almost every day. And still, it just gives me the goosebumps. It just gets me to see what we are building there. So I don't go to the cooling water system every day, but the sheer size of the pumping system, you know, I think it was 10 cubic meters per second is the amount of water that goes through the cooling water system, so per second. And yeah, just to show you that ITER is really, with ITER, we, the fusion community, we are really entering the industrial era. Then ITER does not work by just receiving a check or money from our partners onto our bank account and we then go and sign the contracts with the company. No, somebody long time ago thought of a very clever idea to build ITER in a very unique way, which is called procurement, in-kind procurement. So we split up the ITER machine like a birthday cake, and all the partners could choose which technology they want to contribute to ITER. So it was like a little, you know, a system giving points, credit points for different contributions. So as I already mentioned, the vacuum vessel is partly built by Korea and partly in Italy, or so ASG and SIMC. And the cryostat is a complete Indian procurement. As I said, the central solenoid, that magnet comes from the United States. The superconductors inside, however, come from Japan. All the magnets are contributed, and the superconductors for all the magnets are manufactured all around the world, because this is a technology everybody wanted to take on and develop. So as you can imagine, this is a very crazy way to build such a complex machine as ITER. But there is a method in our madness, because if we kept everything here at ITER within Europe, so once we have the first results with ITER, we would then have to start all over again and to build a fusion industry in the other countries. So while building ITER here in France, in Europe, we want to prove that yes, we can produce fusion energy. Yes, we have the knowledge. And at the same time, we are building up a fusion industry all around the world. Meaning that when we have positive results from ITER, when we say, okay, green light, let's move ahead and do the power plant concept, the fusion industry is there. We cannot wait another 10, 15 years to establish a fusion industry. We have seen that before, that labs and companies build prototypes during the engineering design phases, or even during the negotiation phase for ITER. It took 15 years to come to the today's status. We have lost the knowledge, people have left companies, people have retired. So, and we have learned the hard way, and we want to avoid this. But you can imagine that it's quite an ordeal to keep control over what is happening in South Korea, in India, in St. Petersburg, in San Diego, you name it, that we have the same tight tolerances and the same specifications. So currently, we all talk about science and engineering here. Our project controls office is the largest office within ITER. They have all the power. They have to control what is happening where. have the things been built to our standards? The nuclear operator is then there, they sort of tick it off. Then the components go on ships, come here, and they have to come here at exactly the right time. We don't want them to arrive too early, and we certainly don't want them to arrive too late, because ITER is built in the domino way. So if you come here and visit us, you will see all our car parks. On Mondays, we inaugurate 2 new car parks. On Tuesdays, they are gone, because the logistics people, they just take the car parks and they need them for storage. ITER's mission is very simple. It's this little equation, which means Q bigger equals 10. This is the minimum requirement for ITER, so to produce at least 10 times as much energy that it requires to operate ITER. So with 50 megawatts of input power, we have to get at least 500 megawatt thermal out. So 10 times the energy. We also, as I said before, we want to have to prove that it is scientifically and technologically feasible to produce fusion energy at the large scale, because all the other existing machines, they have also proven the principle, yes, but we have never really done the net gain of energy. So this is ITER's mission. We also want to achieve a burning plasma, which means that we heat the plasma to a certain degree, and then we come to a self-burning state where we can turn off the heating. And not to forget tritium breeding. Tritium is one of our fuels, and tritium is very scarce. We will get tritium from Canada to start the operations, but we will test various technologies within ITER to breed the tritium inside the machine. The little N, which you saw in the reaction in the beginning, has to not only produce energy, but it also has to produce tritium. These tritium breeding modules are lined with lithium, and if the neutron hits the lithium target, it produces tritium. This is a very simplified explanation. Believe me, it is not simple. The case for fusion, why are we doing this? We all know fission, and here in France, 80% of our electricity is produced by fission. But a lot of countries do not accept fission anymore. They have abandoned that way. We think that fusion is safe, that we can produce clean energy with fusion, and that there is abundant energy, because hydrogen, well, we are burning seawater, right? So hydrogen is produced by seawater. It's a standardized process. There's no secret about that. Again, the tritium we produce inside our machine. And if you look at our safety aspects, so if anything happens, if a terrorist decides to land his plane on our beautiful machine, the lid will fall off and not much will happen. The heat inside the machine will come out, okay? But we will never have more than 4 grams of fuel inside the reactor itself. So the release into the atmosphere does not even require that we have to evacuate the ITER worksite. And this was a very strict requirement from the nuclear operator also. And again, 35 nations have put their money on this fusion card because it's the efficiency of this reaction. When we go to the climate conferences, climate change conferences, we will go to the COP conference in November. So we just received the okay that we can participate, and we will make the case for fusion, because the amount of fuel, or the volume and the weight of a pineapple, the fuel, the size of the pineapple, has the potential to replace 10,000 tons of coal. So it's the efficiency, again, never more than 3 to 4 grams of fuel inside our big machine. So it's the efficiency of the fusion reaction why 35 nations and more private investors are putting money on the fusion card. Here's our timeline. So we are currently about 75% completed. A lot of our support systems are under commissioning already, like the power plant, the switchyard, the magnet power conversion buildings, the cryo plant, the cooling water, they're all in the stage commissioning. So, and first plasma here still says 2025. I'm honest with you, it will not be 2025 because ITER has been open right through COVID, and we call it the ITER miracle that ITER never had to close down. We did have COVID cases, but it was all protocoled and under strict quarantine rules. But a lot of our suppliers had to face delays. So this will be announced in November, and I think it will be 26, but it doesn't matter whether it's 1 year. We have waited so long. ITER was supposed to deliver much earlier. 1 more year doesn't matter. The important thing is that we will get there. And so this is when we have first plasma, which is a check plasma, a political plasma. That's when we test the vacuum systems and the magnets. And when that all works, we will have further stage approaches to full power operation, which we expect to happen in 2035. A word on the climate change. I mean, we are discussing with the politicians. I think I speak on behalf of the Fusion Committee, and this is the ITER standpoint. We will not have any impact on the immediate climate change rescue or planet rescue. It will take another 2-3 decades until fusion really hits the electric grid worldwide. But we will be there when the world really needs that, you know. So the renewables will have to build the bridge right now, bridge the gap. But we have to plot on. We have to deliver. You know, one of our former ITER chairs, Sir Chris Llewellyn-Smith, he always said into cameras, "We as mankind cannot afford not to try." And we are trying. So here you see that ITER is more than just the machine, the Tokamak. It's a huge work site, and in the core, in the middle, you see this long building. This is what we call the Tokamak building. And this is what it looked like in May last year when we lowered the first real ITER component, the cryostat base, which is the largest, the heaviest, largest single load, 1,200 tons into the pit. That was quite a goosebump feeling, I can tell you, even for the old fusion guys. Then the lower thermal shield followed, lower cryostat cylinder followed. So all these are super big lifts, which show you that we don't think small here at ITER. This is the lid, which will go on the cryostat in the very end. And I just chose this picture because it shows I say this calls for the science fiction people. And so we were waiting for Hollywood to call. This is one sector of the ITER vacuum vessel. And I'm not sure when we switch to the worksite in less than 1 minute, whether you will be able to see one of them. Currently, we have one vacuum vessel sector and 2 toroidal field coils on the sub-assembly cranes, and they are ready to go into the pit. And it's very difficult to see them, but we will see. And we have a very, very big lift in the assembly hall as we speak. So I'm not sure where my colleague Kirsten will be, and she's already there. So I'm just finishing my presentation here before I give over to you, Kirsten. So as we are talking to teachers today, I just wanted to mention that we have a big website dealing with education and educational resources. Please come and visit us there. A lot of videos and material for you. And of course, come and visit us, you know, not only on the work site, on the website, we have tons of material there. We are on social media, of course, or simply come and visit us. We have a dedicated visits team. We are out there every day, and it's our heart and soul feeling. We want to show it to you. You have to see it, because then you become our friend, I'm sure. So just send us an email to visit.iterorg.com or communications, and we will roll out the red carpet for you. And with this, I hand over to my colleague, Kirsten.
So Sabina, I just want to say massive thank you. At this point, we're going to hand over to Kirsten. So we all have to put on our blue hats. Just wanted to check with Sabina whether we're coming back to you for questions later, or whether questions will go to Kristen. I can't say it. Whether questions will go to Kristen.
Yes.
We will come back to you later. Okay,
yes.
Kristen, please take it away.
Hello and greetings to all of you at the FuseNet Teachers Day. My name is Kirsten Haupt and I welcome you here at ITER. We are here in the assembly hall. This is the place where everything is happening these days. Here, all the components from all over the world are coming together and are being prepared and ready for the installation into the Tokamak pit. Let me show you a little bit around. There are some really interesting things to see. Just behind me is one of the key components. That's a sector of the vacuum vessel. That's the second one that has already arrived on site. It's been manufactured in Korea and it's come here about a month ago. Now, if you walk along, you will see behind me the upending tool. This instrument has been especially designed for putting all the components from a horizontal position into a vertical position in order to be prepared for assembly. Now let's walk a little bit further because I want to show you two of our main big tools that are being used to put the big components together. And oh, I see Jarl over there. Jarl Boskop is a colleague of mine. He is an assembly engineer with a vast experience in big building sites. He has been previously working at CERN at the Large Hadron Collider. Jarl, what can we actually see here behind us? What is that?
Here we are putting our main components together. The vacuum vessel, which you have seen behind you or can see behind you. The thermal shield, which goes around the vacuum vessel. And then the two big magnets, which form one segment, one of the 9 segments we assemble over here. So this is what you see over there.
It's a bit hidden at the moment, unfortunately, because it's in that large assembly tool, right?
Yes, we see at the moment all kinds of side works being done, which obstructs our view. A better view of the tool we see next to us.
But is this one there, the second tool, which is basically identical, right?
Yes, we are preparing a second vacuum vessel, which we saw, which would be effectively in the middle. Around that comes the thermal shields. And around the thermal shields, we have the magnets.
So there are other interesting things to see here, actually. I mean, right on this side, I mean, what are these elements here? What are these components?
These components behind on the yellow support, you see correction magnets, which correct the non-perfect field. And these in front of us are connection elements for other correction elements, correction magnets, which are at the side of the whole assembly
of the machine. And I understand over here, this is quite interesting. These supports here, they are what for?
We set up at this moment. We are preparing for the central solenoid. That is the big magnet in the center of the machine. And here we are setting up the supports to start building the central solenoid.
So these are the gray blocks there with the numbers written P1, P5, and so forth. Okay, thank you, Jarl. That was really interesting. Before we continue, I would like us to have a look up. I would like us to have a look up to the cranes. Do you see the cranes up there? There are a number of cranes. The big ones with the digital gauges, these are the really heavy duty cranes. They each have a lift capacity of 750 tons. So when we have to lift these really big components, and we are talking here of components in the hundreds of tons and sometimes up to 1,000 tons, we need to put these big cranes together even, and then lift these big components in synchronization between those two cranes. So I think now it's time that we move on and we take you into the heart of everything, into the Tokamak pit. I mean, you see this big hall here. It's one of the biggest workplaces here, and it's connected to the Tokamak pit, which you see behind the wall here. The white wall that you see up top, it's open, and behind is the Tokamak pit. And we are going to go there and have a look what it's like over there now. We will have to go through a particular access route. So it's going to be a little corridor here through several of these doors. Where do we go in? Here. We are moving into what we call a port cell. They're to put in everything that the machine needs. And here we go and have a great look at what the installation of the machine, how the installation of the machine is progressing. So our cathedral, so to speak, looks almost like an opera house. So what you see here, this is where the fusion machine is going to be. This is where fusion is going to happen one day. Let me just point a few things out to you so you know. Out.
Okay. There, I think we have a connection problem.
That is actually the cryostat. So you see the lower cylinder and the base section of the cryostat.
Alexandra, come over to me. Yeah. Okay, so
we are back.
Can you mute them?
Are we back?
Okay, so while Kirsten is making her way back home,
are we back again? We are moving.
So who's speaking now? I think Kirsten is muted. Roxana. What?
Okay, so we are trying again.
Yeah.
Sorry for this mishap. I think I understand we had a connection problem. We are back in the Tokamak. So this is where we are in the heart of everything. So I was trying to explain what you see, and I just repeat very quickly. The concrete structure up top, it's behind the entire machine, around the entire machine. That's the bioshield. That's a 1.5 meter thick concrete wall. And then you see in metal, the metal structure around us on our level and also below. That's part of the cryostat. You've just heard about it in the presentation. That cryostat is like a big thermos encapsulating the entire machine, protecting the environment in there, and maintaining the cold temperatures for the magnets. But the interesting thing right now is when we are looking down into the pit, you see already 2 magnets that have been installed there. You see in the middle, the round structure, that's the lowest of the 6 colloidal circular magnets. And then you see the next one already too. This is the number 5, also a circular ring magnet. Their function will be to confine the plasma. And you see these little towers around on the next level. Those are all installed for the support of the toroidal field coils. Now, the tower that you see in the middle is in fact a tool. That tower is the in-pit assembly tool. And that will help keep the sub-assembly, so the sectors of the vacuum vessel, when they come in here, to keep them in position. So you will see in the end, later, when you follow us on all our media channels, you will see how one by one, these sectors are being installed here and kept supported and held by this in-pit assembly tool. So I think you now have got a good impression of where we are. I hope you will continue following us. And I'm saying goodbye from ITER.
Thank you, Kirsten. Thank you. Thank you very much. I think although the connection is not very stable, so we'll have to work on that. So we will make the ITER pit our second ITER studio. So, and I think you at least got a little impression. You know, we also have to work on the camera. So we have new, again, it's a premiere today, but at least we took you there. And again, I invite you all to come here live. And yeah, I mean, our goal is to tell the people why we do this. I think we have no choice but to look for new, clean and safe sources of energy. And I can tell you, we are between 2,000 and 3,000 people, including all the workers on site. We are absolutely committed, you know, like everybody in the fusion community. I mean, it's not only the people that here work for ITER, it's a huge world endeavor, whether it's Roddy Vann in York, whether it's Sander and Luke in Holland, whether it's my colleague in Russia or whoever. I mean, it is really amazing. It's an amazing quest. And I stop here and I give the floor to our audience, Roddy. Are you going to moderate?
I'm very happy to moderate, Sabina, and let me just say, firstly, I mean, thank you so much to you for your presentation and the fact that Kirsten was able to take us around what I would call the experimental area, or on a smaller Tokamak we call it the blockhouse. But I mean the experimental pit is just amazing. That was really fantastic to see inside and see right up to date, obviously, what's going on and the scale of the work. So yes, so I now open the floor for questions. So as previously, please either put in the Q&A box or in the comments, but ideally, please put your questions in the Q&A box. I don't, by the way, have to wear this hat, but I'm an experimentalist, and I had it sitting around, and it made me look like I know what I'm doing. So I decided to put it on. Yeah, any questions, please? This is the biggest science experiment on the planet. So there must be some questions. Will we have access to the video? Do we mean the video that's been recorded? That's a good question. That's probably a question for Xander and Luke.
Yes, it is being recorded and will be posted on the FuseNet website.
Great, brilliant. Thank you.
Maybe I can add to that. So I did not show any video today because we had this live connection, but we do have plenty of videos and a quite recent drone video on the ITER website, which if you go to ITER.org, just go to media and you will find it. There are plenty of videos explaining what we do and where we are at.
So here, first question, Sabina, is about neutron irradiation. So the question is, how are the neutrons stopped? Because the person asking the question says that presumably a lot of the material in the surrounding area, in the surrounding zones, will become radioactive over time.
Yes. So the neutron hits the blanket hardware, and there it is slowed down, and the kinetic energy is transferred into heat energy, and there are cooling loops in the blanket, so there are water manifolds. So basically, we produce hot water and then steam, which drive turbines. And it's a pretty complicated machine to produce hot air, I agree, but the efficiency of producing a lot of hot air, this is what drives us. And of course, there will be neutron irradiation, and this is why the material research is critical for fusion, because we have to find the right material. We use a very special steel, which is Eurofair, that does not accumulate, has a reduced accumulation ratio for neutrons. Neutrons also make material brittle. But nevertheless, we will have to exchange materials once in a while. This is why in the pit you saw a lot of these big portholes. These are port plugs through which we can go inside the machine, and remote handling cranes will then unscrew a blanket module or whatever, take it out and replace it.
And of course, there's also a substantial bioshield, isn't there? Of
course, it's a 3-meter thick bioshield.
So if we're worried from, if you like, a safety point of view, of course Sabina is absolutely right that we want to capture the neutrons in order to generate heat. But from a safety point of view, there's a rather, how should I put it, brute force, sort of scientifically unexciting giant lump of concrete between the Tokamak and the outside world, and access into, once the machine is operating with deuterium and tritium, access inside that bioshield is extremely tightly controlled. So a lot of the work. Sorry, Sabina, I'm answering for you. I should pipe down.
You are the professor.
No. Anyway, perhaps I should. I'm definitely not the ITER expert. Anyway,
so I mean, of course, neutron radiation is a very critical point at ITER. It not just affects sort of hardware like steel and other metals, but also all the diagnostics and electronics, right? So this has been reviewed and reviewed and reviewed, the neutronics at ITER. So this is a very important and critical part, not only for our personal health, but as the bioshield, but also protection issues for the machine itself. Yeah.
Absolutely, but really good question. Thank you. George has asked, what were the orange squares on the white wall of the reactor pit? I'm trying to remember.
Okay, I can. So if you talk about the big concrete wall that is separating the assembly hall from the Tokamak pit, I hope this is what you mean. These are so-called embedded plates. And I think we have a few hundred thousands of them, because the whole bioshield and the concrete surrounding it is, we cannot drill any screw into that concrete. Again, also for neutron radiation aspects. So whenever we want to put up a picture of my husband or a cable tray or anything that's even heavier, we have to put in an embedded plate. These are iron plates. I think it's iron, pure root iron. And I was in the pit yesterday, and again, it's amazing. You know, it's like when you plan your kitchen at home, you really have to decide well in advance where you want not only the plugs for electricity, but also where you want to put up the pictures, where you want to hang up your dishcloth and so on, and that to do that for such a huge construction ITER, this is amazing. But no, these are embedded plates to reinforce everything that needs to be installed inside the reactor.
We've got a question about what happens if and I think the way this question has been asked is really nice, is what happens if a piece of this greatest 3D puzzle does not fit? So if we have a miscalculation, or if two pieces come and they don't interface correctly.
I was in Greece this year, and we took a dinghy to go from the boat to a restaurant, and the boat was in a big wharf, and there was a huge cruise ship being sort of assembled, and it was late at night, and we could hear the sledgehammers fixing sort of misalignments. And I think this is what's happening in ITER. No, I'm just joking. Of course, things will not fit together perfectly, you know, so we saw the cryostat lid, this big saucer, and there were critical issues with that because it came in you know, pieces like cake pieces, and when they pre-aligned them, there was a big void. You know, if there's too much material, you can cut it out, you know, there are discs and whatever, or lasers, but if there is too little material, so there is a solution for everything. And we know, because the components are manufactured in different places, they are shipped here. Some of these components bend under their own weight, you know, not to talk about temperature differences and differences in humidity. The whole transport aspect is also not just for logistical reason, but it's, you also have to take care of all of this, right? So, and if things don't really fit together, we will have to make them fit together. It will just take a bit longer.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree with
I mean, the tolerances given are 2 to 3 millimeters, you know, components like the TF coil, which is 240 tons. So, yeah. And we have a lot of very experienced companies involved, and there's a big company doing all the welding of the cryostat, and they are big players in the oil and gas sector. They build oil rigs and petro industries, and you know, they have never seen anything like ITER, the tight tolerance and specifications we give them, you know. But it's happening, they're doing it. Again, ITER is a steep learning curve for all of us.
And of course, a lot of it is iterative, isn't it? That the folk who are in charge of integration at ITER, I know some of these people, they spend a lot of time going out to the contributing partners, don't they, and checking that that the parts that need to interface are going to interface not just when they arrive at ITER, but long before they arrive at ITER. Checking those design processes.
We have a virtual reality room, and a lot of visitors and VIP visitors are taken there, you know, to see ITER in 3D and to really dive through the, you know, the catacombs of ITER, through the piping systems and so on. And this is not a movie, a cinema. It is used for design integration, so to really have a 3D view of what ITER will look like. And I can tell you, I participated in a lot of these meetings, and we had many, many design clashes. There were pipes that had no throughage through the wall. So of course, this is the most important phase, to do all this integration, because we call it the puzzle with 100 or 1 million pieces. Somebody has to be in control, and that the Tokamak people talk to the magnet people, talk to the diagnostics, that they don't block each other in the end, or that we miss something.
So a question, there's a science question that's come up, which is, how is the temperature measured in the Tokamak, and how precisely can you measure it, and are there other quantities that are important to measure? Shall I take this one, Sabina? Is that okay?
Absolutely. So you're the UK specialist, and it was actually a very wise man from Great Britain who actually made the breakthrough in measuring the temperature very precisely.
So indeed. So one of the ways of measuring the temperature is using a system called Thomson scattering. So you inject a laser, you look at how the laser is scattered by the electrons in the plasma, the electrons in the Tokamak, and from that scattering, from the Doppler shift, essentially, of that, the spread of the Doppler shift of that laser light, you can see, you can get an idea of the temperature, and you can typically measure it fairly accurately. I'm not a Thomson scattering expert, but you can measure it certainly to within a few percent, often better than that. The other approach is using microwaves. So this I know a little bit more about. So the plasma emits as a black body, and particularly the electrons emit. Sorry, if I'm not careful, I'm going to spend 20 minutes giving this answer. Anyway, the electrons emit like a black body, but you can figure out from the frequencies that they're emitting, you can figure out where in the plasma they're emitting from the intensity of the radiation, you can figure out how hot it is. And so using that, you can build up a temperature profile as well. So there are two diagnostic types. There's Thomson scattering and electron cyclotron emission, but there are indeed other quantities that are very important to measure. And just to give one more example, there's is of course the plasma density. So the number of plasma particles per unit volume. And this is done in a couple of ways. One is, again, by you can get the density also from Thomson scattering, but you can also get it from something called interferometry. So you inject a laser beam, often a carbon dioxide laser, and you see how the phase of the laser changes once it's transited the entire Tokamak plasma, and that gives you a line integrated density. That is to say, the total number of particles along the line of the laser. But there are many other quantities as well. Of course, you need to measure the amount of energy that you're getting out. So you need to measure the number of neutrons that are being emitted. I feel like Sabina probably wants to add something on this, but yeah, really good questions.
Well, talking about diagnostics just made me think that I think we have about 100 different diagnostic systems that go into ITER that help us to measure the temperature and the state of our little patient in there. And a lot of people criticize fusion and ITER for the immense cost of the project. We are somewhere around 22 billion euros. But ITER is a patient, it's a prototype, it's a prototype thing. And developing a prototype, whether it's a car or anything else, has its price. And ITER is because it's a prototype, it's a patient on intensive care. We have, again, more than 100 diagnostic instruments and technologies installed at ITER. So when we come to serious production, hopefully the price will also come down and we don't need all this sort of vast instrumentation. But for now, we just have to understand how ITER behaves, where is the plasma, how hot is it, and how many neutrons are being emitted, and so on. Diagnostics is a very, very interesting tool, and maybe we can have a special diagnostics teachers day. No, I'm just joking.
So here's a question that I don't know much about actually. But I think it's a really good one. How well is ITER prepared for things like earthquakes or storms or other natural disasters?
The generic design for ITER was developed before the site was chosen for ITER. So, and the last two competitors in the race were southern France, Cadarache, and Rokasho in northern Japan. And so the generic design was done to also withstand the earthquakes in northern Japan. They have much more seismic activity there than we have here in France. I do not say that we have no seismic activity here. So, but of course, the Earth is much more active on the Japanese island. And so the whole Tokamak complex, this whole building you see here on stage behind me, is sitting on 500 what we call the anti-seismic bearings. These are 1.80 meter concrete pillars. And on top of that are steel plates, rubber beds, steel plates. So the whole complex is literally disconnected from the surrounding soil. So if the Earth decides to shake, the Tokamak complex hopefully will be sort of buffered, that we don't have the same frequency in the building. A lot of people talk about, when it comes to risks here, ITER talk about, of course, radiation issues, earthquakes, terrorist attacks, you know, but the most immediate danger which we have here in the south of France, and I think this danger will increase in the future, is fire. We are in a very hot and dry arid area, so fire and flooding also, because it doesn't rain very often, but when it rains, and then the earth is like concrete, it's completely solidified. So we have a very sophisticated drainage system. We have water tanks all around the site to just evacuate the water. This is also why ITER is built on a little hill. So it's built on a platform which is elevated to just avoid that when we have massive rivers around us, that if these rivers decide to sort of run over, that we are safe here.
I think we've probably only got time for, there's some really good questions coming in. There's one question which came in right at the beginning, actually, which I missed, which was, do we really expect the efficiency to get us Q greater than, if I've understood the question properly, I think it's, do we realistically expect an efficiency of Q greater than 10?
Well, we expect to have more than Q equals 10, right? So we have an operation scenario for Q equals 15. So when we get to burning plasma, so yeah, of course, we believe in it. You know, I think it's just a matter of time, and also I have to say that political backing, right? So that the politicians stay on board with their finance. It's a very cost-intensive endeavor, but I'm absolutely convinced we have so much brain gathered here. We will get to do that. And we just recently, you know, we found a very nice example of what mankind can do if they really want to do something. Look at the COVID vaccines. You know, how many vaccines have entered the market within 1 year? You know, so if there is a political will, there is a public will, then we get there. There's a very famous scientist, and Lev Atzimovich, and he is always quoted up and down, sort of, when will we see fusion energy? And his standard reply was, when society needs it, you know, and the pressure is increasing on us, and we will get there, I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Just sorry, I keep talking, just very briefly. I mean, just look at aviation, you know, I mean, where were we with flying 100 years ago? And now we have Airbus 380s. So this is incredible. And if you've ever flown in an Airbus 380, you would not expect this bird to take off ever, to see a liftoff, you know, but it flies frequently. So
yeah, I mean, I think it's just the most, we have to build, this will be the first machine that aims to get a Q of greater than 10, and it will be very exciting. Yeah, and as Sabina says, there are some very bright people involved with the project. But when you do something for the first time, there is always risk. But I think that makes it more exciting and more worthwhile.
But that is science. Learning from mistakes, making mistakes, and going back to your corner, feel depressed, you know, and then you come back. That is science.
If you look at the way that science has evolved, then typically the large leaps forward are made by new bold experiments, and this is that. But yes, we're as sure as we can be that it'll achieve its objectives. We've got a bunch of other really good questions coming up in the chat, but I think we're going to have to pull things to a close just now.
Roddy, I'm happy. I don't know where these questions end up. If there is an inbox somewhere, I'm happy to take these questions together with you and others to reply.
Sabina, that's really kind. Thank you. Yeah, if Luke and Xander are able to keep track of these questions, that would be really great. So we can address some of them. But I'm aware that some people will have planned their day so that they might need to be somewhere in another few minutes. Sabina and Kirsten, I just want to say a massive thank you from FuseNet, and I'm sure from the participants as well. That was a really great session, and Sabina, thank you for answering those questions, and also for organising that tour around the site. That made it real, you know, which I think was great. And
Sandra,
your invitation.
Can you come here? I just want to show the people that made it possible, because I am just the voice. Although my voice is really bad when I sing. Just come around. These people are never shown. Dylan, come here. His name is Dylan Grimaldi, and he keeps telling me that there is no relationship with the Prince of Monaco. So this is Ruxandra, who runs the studio here, and Dylan, our IT support guy. So thank you very much. All the best.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
À la prochaine, as we say in France.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
To the next time. ITER, thank you so much. Brilliant job.
Welcome. Bye.
So we have about 30 seconds, I think. So it's my pleasure really now just to once again thank everyone for being here. Thank you. The biggest thank you has to go to you, the teachers, for coming along today, for being prepared to find out perhaps a little bit more about Fusion. And I would encourage you, please don't let this be the end. Don't let today be the end of your engagement with the Fusion community. Please stay in touch with us, the people who do Fusion, through your perhaps your local university or your local research institute that does Fusion research, perhaps directly through FuseNet. Please stay in touch. Please do use the educational materials that we have developed and are continuing to develop. And if there are things that the Fusion community can do, please ask us. The worst that can happen is we can say no, but you know that we have too many other things on or whatever. But very often we are able to help, and we are of course very, very keen to do so. So thank you so much for being part of today. Please do stay in touch, and best wishes for the Fusion for the future, whether you're educating in Fusion or in other things. Thank you, and for now, goodbye.